So without further ado, hi, if you don't remember me, my name is Forward Progress, and welcome to Kill a Kill When Fan Service Isn't. Yay! And there was much rejoicing. Thank you, that was the appropriate response. So, that all being said here, again, thank you all for joining us. This is our third panel of FriendCon. This is a panel I've been working on for a while, and I've been excited to do. I actually had this idea a while ago. Let me tell you a little bit of history. Kill la Kill is my favorite anime by far. It is probably the first anime I ever watched from start to finish. And I've rewatched it several times, and I love it. And one thing that I've seen is Kill la Kill gets a rap as very much a fan service anime. When you speak about it, it's what people talk about. So I might be a little weird, but I never looked at it as a fan service anime. So I wanted to have a panel where we dove into this and said, am I insane? Or is there more to this than what meets the eye? So, that being said, in order to have this proper discussion, we need to first take a look at a few things. And one of the first things we need to look at here is, what is fan service exactly? In order to be able to tell, we need a working definition for what is fan service. So, I went online and I looked up a couple of things. This was what I got off of Urban Dictionary here. In general, fan service refers to scenes designed to excite or titillate the viewer. This can include scantily clad outfits, cleavage shots, panty shots, nude scenes, etc. Some broader definitions also include things like cool mecha, big explosions, battle scenes, etc. But what gets me about this is that last sentence right there. Basically, if it has little plot redeeming value but makes the viewer sit up and take notice, it's probably fan service in one form or another. The thing that really gets me is, when we call something fan service, it really seems to be that case of, okay, it's something that's just put in there to make people happy in their pants. Let's call a spade a spade. It's kind of that thing. And I would even vote for the mecha and the explosions for certain people. Hashtag Michael Bay. So, that being said, I did a little more looking, and when you type in fan service into Google, here's what comes up here. Now, we have our own definition up there, but I want to point everybody's attention here to the section there on the right, and where it lists fan service anime. What is the number one result that comes up? Kill la Kill. So, first off, let's tackle a subject here. Why do people consider Kill la Kill a fan service anime? Well, let's take a look. So, yeah. So I can see how those things taken out of context definitely scream fan service, fan service, fan service. But we're going to look deeper at this today. We're going to look at a few different things that are found within the anime. Now, we have to look at the journey as a whole of this presentation, of this anime, of this journey of Matoi Ryoku here, who is, well, I could spend the next 5 to 10 minutes breaking down what happens in the series, but the show itself did a pretty good job of doing that. So I'm gonna let it tell its own story. How about that, everyone? Yeah. 私の名はカムイ鮮血。アイロンがけ、いや、アイロンがけられが大好きな生きたセーラー服だ。さあ、そろそ
来るんじゃないかとみんなが思っていたあの総集編の始まりだ。父の敵、片立ちばさみの女を探す的井竜子は本能寺学園でその鍵を握る生徒会長桐生院皐月に巡り合う。皐月は人間の特殊能力を引き出す生命繊維を織り込んだ極政服を持って全国学園支配を企てていた。だが竜子は私カムイ先決と出会うことで皐月たちと戦う力を手に入れた。ボクシング部、テニス部、風紀部、トラップ開発部、演芸部、落語部、百人一首部、投げナイフ部、南京玉すだれ部、その他無造無造の部活を倒した末行われた解散総選挙。ついに本能寺四天王との戦いが始まった。苦戦しながらもガマゴーリーラ、犬歌砲火、ジャクズレノノンを倒した竜子の前に突然現れるハリメヌイという少女。彼女こそ竜子の父的一心を殺した片立ちばさみの女だったのだ。さらに桐生院財閥の総帥皐月の母親桐生院大王の登場。皐月は全国学園支配の総仕上げとして関西圏3都制圧修学旅行を実行する。その狙いは学園だけでなく桐生院一族に対抗する反制服組織ヌーディストビーチを叩くことだった。バラバラにされた私を元に戻すため竜子も関西に向かう。銭の町大阪で繰り広げられる竜子と皐月の死闘。そして今日ついに生命繊維の謎が明かされるのだ。
Alright, got it? Good. No. Okay, but suffice to say, we open on episode 1. This actually, the backdrop for this slide is from episode 1 of the series, where Matoi Ryuko is looking for evidence and looking to find her father's killer. She's found him murdered, doesn't know who did it. All she has a clue is this mysterious scissor blade. And she, her trails lead her to Hanoji Academy, where she starts to find all of what's happening. And this brings us to the first point I want to get into here, is that I believe that Kill la Kill in general can be viewed as a coming-of-age tale. Now, granted, this isn't the sweet, lovey-dovey, hunky-dory, I'm a teenager just trying to figure myself out, and I'm awkward around boys and girls kind of coming-of-age story. This isn't like 17 again or any of those. Not that I have anything wrong with them. This is told very differently. And it's told here through clothing and the lack thereof. Now, that being said, clothing in this, I believe, is a giant metaphor. And we get a lot of things tackled here. When we first meet Ryuko, she's very unsure of a lot of things of herself. She's fueled by anger and vengeance over finding her father murdered, but as we learn more about her character, there's very much a sense of just she's not comfortable with who she is and she's looking for something. And this shows up in multiple different ways in the show.
今度はテニス部からボコボコにされたとこを助けてくれたんだってね。何でも裸みたいな格好になってまでっていうかなったっていうかあれかな、ゆうこちゃん。やっぱ一人見せるのが好きなのかな、自分の裸。いや、そんなことはないっす。かなり恥ずかしいっす。むしろ脱ぐのは苦手というか。そうそう、あんな格好好きじゃなきゃできないよ。マコもやりたいよ。お母さん、トイレまたこの一家に行っても無駄があったの、私の。
So, the bottom line is at the beginning of it, Ryuko is very uncomfortable with bearing flesh at the beginning of this series. Now, granted, I think a lot of us are. I'm not planning to strip nude for this panel, so you're welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Forward to my panel about children's video games.
I really ordered this wrong, didn't I? We put the kiddie stuff towards the end of this. Oh well. You live and you learn. Yep. So, but there's a sense about self-confidence here and lessons that need to be learned in self-confidence here, because while it's very common for most of us to be a little uncomfortable with bearing our flesh, we kind of have to ask ourselves a little bit of a question inside of what makes it that way, and what are we rejecting beyond just physical appearance in the sense. And we dig deeper into this throughout the series here with Ryuko, even just a couple of episodes in.
まずいぞリュウコ。このままだとあと5分で貧血だ。
お前はそれしか言うことないのか。だったらそんなに血を吸うな。
血を吸わなければリュウコに切られていない。
何？
リュウコが私を着て、私がリュウコに切られた時、力は発現する。だがリュウコはまだ私を着てくれていない。
着てるじゃねえか。こっちは血を吸われた上に恥ずかしい思いをしてるのに、何が不満なんだよ。
興奮するな。今ので15秒減った。
話だな。カムイに貧血から助けられたか。だが覚醒していないカムイなど裸と同じだぞ。露出狂のような格好のお前に現れるとはな。露出狂？くだらん。この姿はカムイが最も力を震える姿。それを俗な価値基準で恥じるなど、まさに己の小ささの証明。この桐生院皐月、我が野望成就のためならば天下に乳房を晒そうと恥もなければひるみもない。我が行動に一点の曇りなし。
There's a lot to unpack from that little bit there. So let's start with it. The biggest thing I want to talk about is the concept of social norms. Satsuki brings it right to the forefront in this episode here. She brings into the fact that Ryuko is unable to fully immerse herself and become as strong as she needs to be. She basically point blank tells her that she cannot fully synchronize with her Kamui, with Senketsu, because she is so strong on the idea of social norms and what's acceptable. And Satsuki as a character has overcome that. She doesn't care how much flesh she bears. She doesn't care what society thinks of her because she knows her cause is noble and pure. Now, that's to say, this is not an argument to start stripping in the street, everybody. I know. I promise you. Oh gosh. Okay, we'll keep the camera on me, not these people. No. but for real, let's look at this from a metaphorical perspective. Think about all of the things that society has told you about how things should be. And regardless of whether or not they're right, how much has that impacted your day-to-day life? How much has that impacted you growing up? And it can be something simple. It can be, just like the way that our habits are, or like there's a social norm for brushing your teeth twice a day. That's a good one, let's face it. But there's other social norms that don't make quite as much sense and really doesn't affect people, but people will get bent out of shape about it. A good example that I use a lot is, I know a lot of people who get offended if you wear a hat indoors. And I've had people try to explain it to me, and it's not that I diss them or don't understand, but it's become very apparent to me while I see people with hats on in this very room. Don't worry, I'm not judging you. We've kind of outgrown the old social norm of this, in my opinion anyway. There was a social norm about how people used to dress and about how you kind of, when you walked into a building, if you were a man, you took your hat off, put it on the little hat rack, coat rack, whatever, and then putting it on was a symbol that you were going to be leaving. So people would take offense if you had kept your hat on, thinking that that means you don't want to be there. Now it can be looked at as a fashion piece, as an add-on. I mean, let's face it. Can you even think about Todd from BoJack Horseman without wearing that beanie? I can't. So it's more than that now, but people still hang on to that. And some people will hang on to it very vehemently. I actually, once upon a time at work, at my job, I have to wear a headset. And I actually, somebody said something to me one time because I had a hat on because the headset was really uncomfortable against my bare head. So I had a hat on, and then I had that on top of that. So, and somebody was like, yeah, it's like kind of really rude. And I was like, how so? And they're like, well, it's making it seem like you're going to leave. I'm like, I'm clocked in. I'm not leaving. I understand, and I'm not doing this to offend. And it wasn't that, but it was kind of one of those things where it's like, you got to kind of recognize the time and the place you are and the effectiveness within it. And before jumping to conclusions about what someone's doing and if they're doing it to offend you, maybe take a further analysis of this and put that into your own life of what you're doing. Are you going to let something that really doesn't matter affect you just because people around you say it? And this can go to the extreme, Let's think about everybody in, say, LGBT communities. When I grew up, it was very much not cool to be gay. And I was very gay. So I was very much in the closet for a long time, and I suffered a lot because society was telling me it's not the norm and it's not okay. And I had to realize being myself and being happy was more important than caving into that. Now, to go along with this, we're going to talk about an actual sociological theory called the social comparison theory. And what that basically says at its core essence is that we're all always comparing things around us and comparing ourselves to others. Think about it this way. How would you know that a tree is a tree unless you knew other things that weren't a tree? You knew the components of what made a tree a tree. You knew the color scheme. You knew what bark is made of. You know what it generally looks like. And society has told you that way. And you know it because you've compared it to other things. You know the difference between a spruce and a pine. Wait, no, that was a bad example, wasn't it? But you get my point. There aren't all winners, everyone. I try my best, though. But the bottom line is that we do that in our social circles, too. We do that. We are always comparing ourselves to other people. We're looking at what other people do and how it affects our own self-esteem and our own sense of self overall. So this is where we get into things like nudity, for example, or the fact of this, in this series, especially towards the beginning, they're not nude. They're just showing a little more flesh than in what is socially acceptable. And then the question becomes, what does it mean and how do you overcome it? And that is very much a parallel for a coming-of-age tale of having to overcome societal expectations of yourself in order to be who you really are. And Ryuko has to discover that several times in the series, but has a real epiphany moment early on.
くだらなくねえよ全然くだらなかねえよ龍子やっと分かったよ裸になればいいんだカムイを切るってことはお前と一体になるってことお前が私の素肌になるってことそれがお前を着こなすってことそうだな鮮血
その通りだ
人に一体カムイ鮮血
龍子と私の力だ
お前が無駄に血を吸っていたのは私が恥ずかしがってお前を拒んでいたから心を閉ざしていた分血のつながりを欲したそういうことだったんだな
今の龍子ならさっきの血で十分だ龍子が私を着て私は龍子に着られている
The thing I love about that clip is when they realize what it means in this sense to get naked, which we're going to take in both a figurative and a literal sense almost here. Because it's not a matter of just bearing flesh. It's being naked with your soul bared out. That you're not rejecting who you are. You're not rejecting who you want to be with because of what society is telling you. And therefore, your soul is naked. Your soul is bared out. And you can be who you were meant to be. You can be stronger, more powerful. You can be the next great insert joke here. I can't. But but you get my point, everyone. There is something to this that's more than just a sense of, ooh, we're gonna show some boobies so everybody gets happy in the fans. Yeah, there's a little bit of booby, but it's not all about the booby. And booty. Yes, and the booty. Of course, the booty. So obviously, the journey continues. Now, the journey is not just about these things, though, because the journey is not just about a clear path of self-discovery that keeps going up. Real life doesn't do that. Hence the fact that we're holding a convention from my living room. Life doesn't exactly always work out that way, where it's going to be the way you wanted it to go. We were all supposed to be in a big convention center hugging our friends. Now we're keeping our distance and sanitizing everything online. And not getting naked. Yes. That's for later.
Speak for yourself.
Anyway,
Not after hours yet.
so the bottom line is sometimes things are going to happen that are going to change your trajectory, and you're going to lose focus. And this happens in a major way in this show.
じゃあ、あの時私が見たのはお前だったのか。
そういうこと。君みたいな可愛い子が来るんだったら逃げずに待ってればよかった。
ふざけたこと。
そんなんでお父様の敵を取るつもり？無理無理無理。
言わせてよ。
やめろリュウコ、その血の熱さは危険だ。このままだと私は自分を保てない。
Yeah, I forgot.
ダメだ、彼女完全に暴走している。
カムイの力に飲み込まれたってわけ。
このままではマトイの体が持たない。数分で失血死してしまうだろう。
Right.
Let's talk about how we as human beings react. As we said at the beginning here, Ryuko's journey is one of vengeance initially, and it's very up and down about how it's going to pan out, because she's still figuring out herself. And with that hatred, that anger as her motivational factor, it's definitely going to impact the way she reacts. Now let's talk about how we as human beings react in general. So you have emotions and you have logic. Here's what happens. When you ever have anything that comes across your brain that kind of challenges you in some way, information that isn't just your ho-hum run-of-the-mill, you're going to react in a very specific way. The center of your brain that controls your emotional center, or your emotions, is the first thing that gets activated. Your logic centers only kick in afterwards. So 9 times out of 10, when you are reading something that challenges you, when you're viewing something, when somebody says something to you, you are going to react emotionally as your first instinct. Now, why do we do that? There is an obvious answer to this. It breaks it down to the core of humanity. What do we do in any situation where we're challenged? It's called fight or flight. I've heard fight, flight, or freeze too, which is valid, and I would give credence to that too. But the bottom line is that your body's hardwired to figure out how to survive. If you take the time to logic out everything, if you're trying to use your logic to fully process an imminent bear attack, you gonna die. You want the fight or flight to kick in to be like, run, bitch, run! You still might not survive, but that's beside the point. But at least you're trying. Your body wants to survive. It's doing all it can to try to make this happen. Now, that being said, so you don't want to ignore the emotions, right? You don't want to ignore them, but you also don't want to react just on emotion. Because when you react just on emotion, you get to a level of what Ryuko just did. She wasn't thinking logically about wanting to find out more information about why her father was murdered from Nui. She wasn't thinking about, trying to just detain her. She was fueled with nothing but emotion, anger, hatred, vengeance, spite. I'm going to take that girl down. And what did she do? She literally turned into a monster. Another thing I want to point out that ties into our theme of on clothing and fan service here. Notice how when she turns into a monster, there's almost more clothes than person. And when she's more in sync, there's more person, more flesh than clothes. Interesting to note. You can kind of take a look here. There's still flesh, but it's kind of covered.
大丈夫だから落ち着け。よせ。リュウコちゃん。ありがとう。
When you lose your focus, one of the most important things to have, let's face it, is friendship. And if you know me, you knew I was going to bring friendship into this somehow.
What appeal.
But let's face it, friendship matters. Friendship's important. Humans are social creatures. We thrive in societies where we do interact. That's why this time right now of COVID is so freaking scary, because we're isolating, because we're being told to stay inside and stay away from people. And that's why holding events, connecting with people online is so important right now, because without connectivity, without social interaction, without friendship, are we all just going to devolve into reactionary monsters? Hopefully not. But we need somebody and something to keep us steady. And a lot of people, and I know myself included, have friends, and a lot of times in situations know you more than you know them yourself. They can provide a fresh perspective. If it weren't for Mako, who, can we face it, everybody? Mankanchiko Mako is like the hero of this series. She is the best girl. She is wonderful and amazing. But without her being able to kind of do that for her friend, somebody that she really cares about, what would have happened to Ryuko? Well, they said it. She was gonna die. She would have died of blood loss if she wasn't snapped back out of it by her friend. Friends can do that for you. Friends are there in interesting ways that sometimes you don't expect, but that's what makes true friends true friends.
この服はリュウコちゃんのお友達。
人と服はコミュニケートできない。友達になどなれるはずがない。
なれる。私は今まで頭の中にしか友達がいなかった。でもリュウコちゃんに会って本当の友達ができた。そんなリュウコちゃんなら服とだって友達になれる。むしろもうだって。ダメじゃない。お友達は大事にしなきゃ。ありがとう、マコ。
いらぬ邪魔が入った。さあ、話せ。
てめえには死んでも渡さねえ。
まだ痛い目を見たいのか。竜子に手を出すな。私は許さない。今喋ったか、その服。こいつら互いに。
Friendship we saw on two different levels in that last clip there. We had Mako being Mako and staring death in the face, essentially, in a dangerous situation, goes, no, I'm going to save you and save your friend, the sailor suit that apparently you talked to, but I don't know it's alive. At this point, nobody really knows, other than Ryuko and New to Speech, that life fibers are living beings and that clothing is alive, essentially, and especially Senket's. They just think she's a weird girl who tucks to her outfit because it's the only friend she had. And Mako doesn't care. She steps in and does it because it's what matters to her friend. Puts herself there. And then you have Senket's, who threw himself in front of a live gun to protect Ryuko, showing his friendship. Friendship can give you a fresh perspective in times you need it. And that's what this did. And it happened earlier in that last scene too. Oftentimes, like, there's probably about 4 or 5 times in the series where Mako serves as just, she's got no special powers, no special abilities, but she loves, and she's a friend, and she knows what to do for her friend. And that can be the most powerful thing of all. And that's what brings, in this instance, Senketsu and Ryuko closer together as a unity, as that nudity we talked about earlier between clothing and humanity that's more than just basic, quote-unquote, nudity.
ここだ。
よかった。
あの男に感謝するんだな。
ちくしょう、負けた。乾杯だ。
お互いボロボロだ。無理はするな。
先決、私たちはもっと強くならなければいけない。いや、強くなれる。一緒なら。
ああ、お前の大事な一丁羅だからな。
いや違う。
うん？
友達だ。
あ
あ。ただ体脂肪はもう測るな。
それはできんな。
友達だろうが。
ウエストを2センチ絞れ。
だからうっせんだよ。
Okay, a couple things I want to take away from that. First of all, they have an endearing moment that breaks right into stop studying my BMI, stop telling me to lose weight. That's how real friends talk. Let's face it. We always have that way of negging each other, but we do it out of love. That's real friendship. When you know somebody that well, that you know you can be brutally honest with them, but you also know them so well that you will stand up for them till the end of time. That's true friendship. The other thing here that I love from that scene, and anybody who's ever seen a couple of my Keeping Friendship Magic panels I've done in the past, is that moment when Ryuko says to Senketsu that you are my friend. And he has and his eyes light up, and there is a connection that's there, that's obvious. And in that moment, they become more. Anybody who's a fan of My Little Pony can remember episode 1, technically episode 2, when Twilight realizes that she now has friends, and it creates a spark that brings together the elements of harmony and makes them more powerful. In other words, Kill la Kill shows you that friendship is magic!
Boo! Quit plugging.
It's not even my show.
Trying to put himself over on his own show.
But
We love you, Jared.
I love you too. But friendship is damn powerful, else I wouldn't talk about it.
I agree.
So, since we got to bring up Mako, let's talk about the whole dang Makachiko family, shall we? Because they definitely have a purpose to serve in this anime, and that purpose goes right along with the theme of this panel. Let's take a look, shall we?
They still get to see more than I do.
The Makachiko men certainly are in this anime to show the societal expectation of the pervy male gaze, so to speak. I'm not saying that it's not out there. There are those that do. But let's face it, we live in a society where how you dress and how you look, your appearance is valued immensely. We treat our bodies as sexual objects. Even things like breasts that are not inherently a sexual organ are heavily sexualized. So, ergo, you have them put in here in a way to say, here's the expectation of society, and what happens to them every time they try to perv? Bam! right to the kisser, straight to the moon.
We're getting a divorce.
Sure. They never got a divorce, though, did they?
It's 2020, Jared. Get it together.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's 2020, Jared. Get a divorce.
You know what? It's okay.
You're
I'm
not
not
married yet.
Well, I was gonna say we're not getting married till next year.
Get divorced now, you'll have it out of the way.
Oh, okay. We'll get the marriage before the divorce. Thank you, everybody.
Get it out of the way.
Hey, honey, do you want to get divorced so we can go get married for real?
Sure.
Okay. That's my fiance, everybody. Thank you. So, but an interesting thing about this is the notion of the pervy gaze is used in different ways throughout the series, and I can't think of any other way that is a better example than this episode. Somebody. I took that. So, in this episode, the pervy male gaze is an obvious distraction, and I would argue it is used as a weapon in this episode. Because we learn at the end of this episode there that our friend we've been rolling around with this whole time has been doing everything to undermine them to get their hands on Senkets for themselves. She is using the notion that everybody wants to look at Ryuko's body as a weapon, where if they were just like cognizant of the fact that she's just a person who has a body and we don't have to crash into a wall every time we see panties, not even full nudity. This is a thing that's definitely, it's a thing to take into consideration about what this show is saying about nudity versus being clothed, about fan service. It's being used here as a weapon. It's crazy to think about this, but it's definitely something to think about everything we've talked about so far, about coming of age, about coming to terms with being comfortable with who you are and where you are in society, that if you can't be comfortable enough to finish your task without just a little bit of something, have you really come of age yet? Something to think about here. And we get even more with the Makanchiko family. I mean, they're fantastic. We get to see a lot with them beyond just this. There's something I love about the fact that the Makanchiko men kind of get their own, in a way. They're like, they don't just, it's not just all about seeing that fresh girl booty. Nope. We get to see the full frontal male experience. And they are like, what the hell? But that's another thing. Women have bodies, men have bodies. Why is it one way and not the other? Things to think about. The other thing being, come on, Mrs. Makachiko, who is like the sweetest, most darling person in this entire anime. I mean, you can't blame her for taking a look. I would have too. But that's not the point in this regard. The point is, it's there. Everybody's got a little bit of something. But notice how she doesn't kind of lose her focus throughout the entire series. She has her focus on who she is and what she is, with one major exception we're going to get into in a moment. But everybody is curious. Everybody has desires, thoughts, feelings. They want, we are sexual creatures too, but that does not mean we have to turn into animals about it. Now, we learn a lot about family in general through the Makachiko family and the rest of the series, and we're going to talk a lot about family representation throughout the rest of this presentation here. And we get that from just this beautiful moment of the family together. The Makachiko family also teaches us a valuable lesson about greed in this series. In the clip there, this is a family who is poor, doesn't have a whole lot due to their social standing, due to, let's be real here, a hierarchy based on clothes. This is a hierarchy where the higher social standing you have, you get more powerful clothing to armament yourself with. You can go from being a no star to a 1-star to a 2-star. And as you do, you get more powerful clothing to assist you in what you're doing. And it also represents your social stature. So there is something to be said here about having nothing and feeling pure. And then what happens when you get a little bit of that power, when you get a little bit of that money. When Mako becomes a class president and their status raises as a family, all of a sudden, they get more. They get this sense of greed, and it overtakes them. And they want more. And they don't care about the simple things. The simple joys of the family dinner. And we can argue about family dinners in modern society and what they really represent. However, in this series, it's used as that metaphor about being appreciative of what you have, even if you have nothing. You don't have to be dressed to the nines in this powerful outfit with all of this stuff. And let's face it, the gold statue of Mr. Makachiko with the teeth and the grills, it's fantastic. I'm not gonna lie. But what a symbol of opulence. And they bring this full front when Ryuko, has had enough and tells Mako just as much.
退部届だ。は？何言ってるの？私は喧嘩部を辞める。そんな、今龍子ちゃんが辞めたらまたスラム街に逆戻りよ。 それでいいんだ。
嫌よ、そんなの絶対に
何？喧嘩部部長満貫色マコ、貴様の二つ星極征服がその中に入っている。
嫌。私の
今の地位と暮らしを守りたければマトイと戦い、そして倒せ。なんだと？マトイを倒せば貴様には三つ星極征服を与えよう。
さつき様。
気流院、貴様汚いぞ。マコ、やめろ。
だってやっと掴んだ贅沢だもん。もう貧乏には戻れないもん。
バカ、目を覚ませ。おじさん、おばさん。くそ。
マコ、お前。
よせ、おじさん。今のマコはどうかしてる。止めようとするとあんたたちも危険だ。あれ？
何もたもたしてんだ。早くリュウコちゃんをやって。
それ一気に出しよう。
地獄を送りてえ。って止めんじゃないの。
Literally with clothing, it shows greed taken over. Mako refuses to go back to that old life because she thinks that this is what makes them better, makes them a family. And her family is right along with it. They are cheering on the destruction of somebody that they held once dear and true as a valued person. And now it doesn't matter because things matter. Stuff matters. And it takes quite the battle. Now, one thing I want to point out is in the middle of this, Satsuki makes a very good point. So, I'm going to read this off to you of something Satsuki says. She says, "Observe, Matoi. This is human nature in its purest form. Prosperity will lead to greed, and greed will lead to their eventual downfall. Once they have a taste of worldly pleasures, they're enslaved by them forever. Truly, they are pigs in human clothing, pigs that must be tamed by force." Powerful, powerful stuff. And let's face it, what we know of Satsuki at this point is she is literally using clothing to create a hierarchical system and making people feel like pigs in human clothing who need to be controlled to meet Satsuki's ultimate goal, which at this point in the series, we don't know what it is. We'll be getting there momentarily. But there's something to be said about this. And the greatest thing about this is that Satsuki truly believes this. Notice how she said earlier about how she doesn't care how she looks because she knows what her goal is and who she is. But she's also saying at the same token that others are being this way. And it needs to be proven wrong if it's to be the way to go. And Ryuko helps with that.
Get 逆切れ？
部長になって生活良くなってみんなキラキラしてると思ってた。家族みんなが輝いてると思ってた。でもそうじゃなかったの。あれはキラキラしてただけ。欲に目がくらんでクラクラしてただけ。キラキラじゃなくてキラキラのクラクラだったの。もう二度とあんなみっともない真似しないから。欲に目がくらんでお恥ずかしいのに。本当にすみませんでした。
notice how in that clip, when they realize the error in their ways and they want to apologize, what is the first thing that goes?
Clothes.
Their clothing. It's more. Clothing in this series is more than just clothing. In more ways than one, let's face it. But there is the constant metaphor about shedding your skin and being your true self. Shedding your clothes, showing your bare self, your bare soul to the world. I would say that that's more than just a little bit of titillating for the audience, but that's just me. Speaking of family, let's get into another kind of family.
Oh no!
Oh, yes.
Time for bad touch.
父は優秀な科学者だった。その能力を見込まれて桐生院の家に婿に入った。そして私という子供を作った。だがそれは生命繊維の実験体にするためだったのだ。ダメね。1歳児では遅すぎたわ。やはりこの子に。翌年、生まれたばかりの次の子供に生命繊維と融合させる実験を行った。私の遺伝子を持つ個体でも生命繊維への拒否反応は否めないか。仕方ない。
So I think it's safe to say that the Kirwin family would be a prime example of one dysfunctional family.
Jesus. Yeah, yeah.
They literally throw away their baby because it won't serve clothing. There's not a lot I can say other than it's obvious here. And what we're shown throughout this is there is this family that Satsuki, and we find out later, Ryuko, was born into, that was doomed from the start. And family, while important, we just saw these great things with the Makanchiko family about learning their lessons. This family is not learning their lessons. This family is toxic to each other. Even Ryuko's dad escapes and takes her off, but has a terrible relationship with her because he's hiding things from her the whole time. He's doing it to protect her, but he's never able to make that real connection that's needed. And that's something that's shown throughout this series here. And the other thing, too, I'm going to touch on this quickly because I know I'm running short on time, is let's face it, I would consider so much of this abusive, and a lot of the things between Ragyo and Satsuki throughout this are purposefully uncomfortable to watch. There is levels of, there was the fact that there were scenes with them together that are just, you just are like, oh.
Yeah, correct, agreed.
And it's on purpose. It is to send a message about what not to do. And about how not to be a slave to these things. So, yeah. Granted, a lot comes to pass throughout the series, and we're going to try and speed through this because I know I'm running a little low on time. But...
どうやらそのようだな。私はラ行に勝つためには全ての人間を私の駒にして動かさなければならない。そう思っていた。お前のこともそうだ。鮮血を着て現れたあの時からラ行たちに対抗するための大きな戦力として育てようと考えた。父親の仇と私を狙わせてお前と鮮血の力を測った。お前がカムイに飲み込まれることなく自分の意志を持っていられればラ行へのクーデターの時に必ず役に立つ。お前に真実を教えなくてもうまく誘導してラ行への戦力にできると。てめえ。だがそれは大きな間違いだった。結局私もラ行と同じやり方をとっていたのだ。それでは勝てないのは当然だ。一番愚かだったのは私だ。
さつきちゃん、
今わかった。世界は一枚の布ではない。なんだかよくわからないものに溢れているから、この世界は美しい。その世界を守るため一緒に戦ってくれ、リュウコ。
That is one of my favorite scenes from the entire series. They are all stripped of what they once had. There's no Goku uniforms. Satsuki is not wearing Junkets at this point. Ryuko just got Senkets back. They are all stripped down from what they had. And a moment of realization, they all realize what true family is, what a functional family is. It is not necessarily always the family you're born into. It is sometimes the family you make and you build. It is the family that Satsuki built with the Elite Four. It is the family that is developing between Ryuko and Satsuki, and the power in a stripped down moment to realize and admit when you have been the baddest bitch on the planet and the biggest I am right and everyone else is wrong, to admit you didn't look at it a certain way, and it took who you now know is your sister to show you that way. It's a powerful, powerful moment. So we're getting close here. A couple things I want to really wrap home things with that really just... one thing on rewatching that I think just stuck out to me so much is one of the other little themes here about wearing what you want with clothing and what it can represent.
始まったか。私が行く。私が行く。
リュウコちゃん、デートしよう。は？聞いて。リュウコちゃん、帰ってきたらデートしよう。可愛い服着て、可愛いアクセサリーつけて、買い物したり、アイスクリーム食べたり、女の子が好きな服好きに着て、安心しておしゃれができる。そんな世界にリュウコちゃんがしてくれる。してくれる。してくれる。
わかった。頼んだぞ。人類の生存のために。
女の子のおしゃれのために。
Opening doors you didn't think were possible. Come on. Like, the fact that Mako is like, let's go out on a date, and in the end credits of the final episode, we see the date. It's so adorable. But it's what she says about breaking down barriers. With Ryuko saving the world, being who she is, feeling comfortable with herself, exuding that confidence. This isn't just about fan service. This isn't just about the clothing you're wearing or not wearing. It's about saying, I am me, and you can be you too, in whatever form that takes. And in this case, a date with Mako. Yeah. And it's adorable. But I think the most powerful thing of all is essentially the way the series ends. The series ends with all of them completely nude, together as one big unit, huddled together in happiness and peace, not in perversion.
Big unit. You went over.
You're banished to the shadow realm. But the point is, the men who were pervy the entire time, no evidence of this here. This is all about family and togetherness. This is a snapshot of being home, being a family. Goddamn, unit, yes, it's the best word I could use, but being together and not caring about what anybody else thinks. And that is a true coming of age tale. That is ignoring what social norms, not ignoring them completely, but recognizing that you can be more than that. And you can be together and be the person you want to be. And that's why I say the Kill la Kill, it's when fan service isn't. And with that, that is my time. If you actually like what you're seeing today, you can always help us out on our Patreon. I've got links there. We are looking to get the podcast going even more and get it through some real podcast hosting if we can get some more patrons. So if you want to donate, feel free. Otherwise, feel free to check out all the other wonderful things.